Sorry about
All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our interview with Bret Nelson, writer of Manborg. He's man,
hello.
he's machine. He's the Manborg. My
Now,
pull quote.
I don't know if I'm going to be echoey or not.
Oh,
Sounds
you're
good, right?
yeah, it sounds fine.
Awesome. Okay.
So, Bret, what can you tell us about your career? Because you have a whole bunch of different things. Bret was really nice, and he sent me an email with this pile of like all these awesome things. And I'm like, oh, I only have two IMDb credits for one thing.
Pile doesn't sound complimentary.
Well, I mean, it was
The
a
steaming heap of credits.
nice stack of like portfolio. Like, I mean it in the best way.
Well,
Uh,
what I started. It's just that I'm old. That's all. So if you're old, you've been doing things for a really long time. By the time you're my age, you will have a lot more credits because you will have been kicking around a lot longer.
Fair enough.
Uh, a lot of what I've done in the past has been kid entertainment.
Okay.
So when there was such a thing as PC CD-ROM, uh, edutainment titles, as we used to call them, I was with Walt Disney Interactive, and I got to do stuff with Buzz Lightyear, and I got to do stuff with the Toy Story cast, and I got to do the stuff with the classic characters. That was the most fun. Disney Magic Artist Studio, and that was at a time when hardly anybody was doing anything with Mickey or Donald or Goofy. It was all sort of very still with them at that time. Feature animation was going through the roof. We had Hercules at that time. It was during the Hercules Mulan era,
Okay.
and I was there from Toy Story 1 to Toy Story 2. That was the Toy Story was the bookends of my time at DI. But so yeah, a lot of PC CD-ROM. When I left Disney, I moved over to the Jim Henson Company, and there a lot of console games, a lot of Game Boy Advance games, and more CDs, and those were with all the Henson properties. So I got to do Farscape and Bear in the Big Blue House and the Muppets, all of those guys. So that was all fun. I'm still working. Well, when they hire me, I should say, I'm still working with Henson's. We have a show that's been on the air for a very long time on Netflix. I think we're in our 7th season now, called Word Party, with
Okay.
dancing, singing animals, teaching your children about word acquisition and using their words, and very infectious songs. So I apologize to any parents in the audience who are going, "Oh, that show!" Um, but always along the way, it's been science fiction and horror that I spend my time with in my private life. So
It's balance, right?
it's just for balance. That's exactly it. And always writing, always writing. So that brings us, like I said, most of the TV credits are and the game credits are all children. It's all children stuff.
Yeah.
And then later, late at night, I go to the typewriter and I make stuff for childish adults, and that's the writing stuff.
It's me right there. So how did you get involved with Encyclopocalypse?
I wrote a couple of stories that I was fishing around with, and it was a friend of mine, David Bergantino, who is a author. He's got books at Encyclopocalypse, and I've known him for years. And he said, "This is really good." And he said, "You know who should see this is Mark Miller." And I said, "Should he?" And David said, "Yes, you need to send this to him." And I said, "Okay." So, stranger, hi. Somebody told me that you should on it here. Take this. And that was Lumber, which was a story I wrote a few years back, and he really, really liked it and said, "I want to put this out as an ebook." And I said, "But it's one story." And he said, "That's the wonder of Kindle, is you can put out a page, you can put out what a comic book. You can put out any sizable thing you want.
Mhm.
So he was going to put it up and see what it looked like, and it was just too short. So I ended up writing 2 more stories to go with it, and it became a little micro collection called Lumber and Other Tales, and that was the first thing I put up with Encyclopocalypse. That was, I think, 2 years ago, maybe 3.
Yeah. And is that collected? You have a collection of short stories through them, correct?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then Manborg comes along, which I do believe that's we're coming up on the 10th anniversary, or it's
10th anniversary was last year. It was 2011
it was
that it came out.
2011.
Mhm.
Okay. So how did that how'd you get that gig, so to say?
The next thing I'm working on for Encyclopocalypse that I probably shouldn't talk about
Mhm.
has to do with exploitation films.
Okay.
It's a larger project series that just surrounds a Poverty Row studio and the shenanigans they get up to. And as Mark and I were discussing this project, uh, he said, "Have you seen Manborg?" And I said, "What's a Manborg?" And he said, "Have you seen Psycho Gorman?" And I said, "Yes, and I love it, and it's fantastic, and I'm surprised we're not watching Psycho Gorman right now. Let's go do that instead of talking about this." And then he said, "You need to watch Manborg and tell me if you like it." So I did, and I loved it. It was everything that 16-year-old Bret would have been looking for wandering through the video store. Just that cover would have been, yes, this is way
Yeah.
better. This is way better than Wizards of the Lost Kingdom. I am watching this tonight. And I was right. It would have been way better than Wizards of the Lost Kingdom when I watched it that night, except that it came out in 2011. So the more I heard about it, and the more, the legendary tale of this movie that was made out of passion, sweat, and blood for $1,000 Canadian, the more I watched and learned about it, I got hold of Mark again, and I said, "This is great. What about it?" And he said, "You're not going to believe this, but I've been wanting to do the novelization of it, but I haven't had time to do the novelization of it. And based on these other exploitation film things you're working on, I think you may be the one, maybe." So I wrote I wrote the first 3 chapters and said, if it's like this, is that kind of what you're looking for? And he said, yes. And then he got Steve Kostansky on the phone with me and with him, and we talked through how it was all going to work out. And then that was it, straight through to the end.
Okay. So did you end up with like a script?
Yeah, I had the movie itself
Mhm.
streaming, and I had the original screenplay by Mr. Kostansky and Mr. Gillespie. And between those, because they're not the same, and they're never the same,
Mhm.
between those, it's a very lean story the way they told it. It is all meat, no fillers. Every thing is necessary to it, but at the same time, they did very good. It's so odd talking about when you look at Manborg, you think this is Wizards of the Lost Kingdom, Barbarian Queen, Atlantic Rim, all those kinds of movies come to mind.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm getting too geeky in my bad film.
Oh, no. I am following around along.
Uh, the thing that's different here is I don't think anybody at Astron 6 mocks. I don't think they do things winking at the camera. I don't think they make fun of. They say themselves that they were raised on Charles Band straight to DVD movies. They were raised on Robot Jocks. They were raised on all of those fantastic David Carradine futuristic cop movies. And this movie itself owes a lot to, what is it, the Eliminators which was that was the one where the cyborg was actually on the front of a golf cart. It was on the front of a six-wheel buggy.
Yeah.
Their cyborg was, but it was all explosions and explosions and explosions and an optical laser beam and then more explosions. I think the whole last 45 minutes of the script was look out and run in the Maters. That's all anybody said. It was fantastic. So as I'm watching Manborg, there's a whole movie in there, and Steve Kostanski, damn it, he makes good stuff. There's assumptions going on. There's stuff outside the edges of the frame. Meganet City is a whole city. Hell's rule on Earth. There's clearly a hierarchy. There's a way things work here. Some of the Kilborgs are cops. There's law and order. There's still humans in town. There's a gladiator arena, and some of the demons are rooting for the humans. Because there's a shot where the humans win, and this promo picture of one of the humans comes up on the jumbotron, and she like winks at the camera, and the crowd goes wild. So that was my main question for Steve Kostanski when we were talking to him. Was it was clear there's stuff beyond the edges of the screen. Is it okay to explore how it all works and how we got here and all those backstories and everything? And he said, yes, please. He had some answers to it, and for other answers to it, he said, I'm looking forward to hearing about that, because we simply didn't have time to go that deeply into it. So yeah, between the script and the movie itself, that was most of the structure of it, but there were still lots of parts that needed to be painted out for the whole picture to be complete. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I noticed that. I'm about halfway through watching Manborg, and I noticed like the second chapter, really, like there's the prologue and there's the first chapter. That's not really in the film,
but it had to happen.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Not in the movie, but it had to happen. They're clearly in a firefight.
Mm-hmm.
They had to get there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. As a fan of movie novelizations, I love when you get that sort of thing. You get that flushing out of what had to happen before we get to the film.
And that's what I was looking for. If the whole story is a set of monkey bars, and you're gonna swing from bar to bar to get through the story. In a couple of places, there were places where you would have swung and just been reaching like crazy. There's no bar there, and that means I have to come up with something and write about that chunk of it. And again, the way this movie's crafted, if you look at a pan in Meganet City, they took the time to stand people in front of the green screen and get a shot of 5 Kilborgs beating the crap out of somebody with nightsticks. And then they composited that tiny into the background, and somebody else is just standing on a corner shuffling his feet, hoping not to get no. They populated the city with these little vignettes. Mm-hmm. So that helped me, because if I needed to get some exposition across, if I needed to get some exposition across, there were little stories going on that I could hang the exposition on. You know, there's this guy, when Manborg first appears, there's a guy in the alley getting his butt kicked. Mm-hmm. What's he doing there? If I can figure out what he's doing there, that helps me tell the story of the city. And he became the guy who was on the lam from that whole first section of the paragraph when Manborg springs onto the scene. He's in the movie. If you watch the movie, you'll see him for a second, but he's only in the alleyway getting beaten up. But he helped me to tell the story of how life works in Meganet City if you're a human and you live there.
Now, did you read other movie novelizations in the same genre as Manborg?
I've read them all my life, because again, I'm old. I remember when there was no home video. If you wanted to have the home video, to have the movie, if you wanted to see Star Wars without, a friend who had a really complicated Betamax deck and thousands of dollars,
Mhm.
your choices were either to get the novelization or to, I think I said it in another video. I had a friend who got on, ordered out of the back of Starlog magazine. You could get little 6-minute Super 8 clips from movies, and he had the Millennium Falcon's escape from the Death Star and those 4 TIE fighters that fight it, where they're shooting, but no sound. But we ran it until, or Viewmaster, and I was not believed, by the way. Somebody said there's no way that was home video then. I am here to tell you, because these are mine. This is my Viewmaster home version of the Poseidon Adventure.
Okay.
That's home video in my in my age. This is a Star Trek episode, The Omega Glory, on Viewmaster, and the spookiest ever actual episode of Dark Shadows on Viewmaster. Barnabas Collins himself creeping around. But that was home video back in the day, 21 frames.
Gosh, I haven't thought about Viewmaster in forever. I had one as a kid, and I had a bunch of I remember having Peter Pan on Viewmaster, and I'd just sit there because we were really, really poor. My dad was going through law school when I was very small, so our TV, I don't think, worked back then, or it didn't work well.
Just
So
because I have a ton of these and I never threw them away. Was it the Peter Pan with like the claymation looking guys, or was it the Disney's Peter Pan?
it was the Disney's.
The Disney's? Oh, so cool.
Yeah, I had a few of them. I think I had the Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. I had Toy Story, and I think I had the Joel Schumacher Batman and Robin.
Nice. This is actually my grandfather's Viewmaster. It's all backlight. Look at this thing.
There we go.
Got it from the national park in Boulder, Colorado. He picked it up, and it still works. It all still works. Takes me back. Anyway, this, kids at home, this used to be your home video system right here. We've come a long way. This does not stream.
I didn't know that you could order for, it was a 16 millimeter?
No, it was Super 8.
It was
like
Super
your home
8.
movies ran on.
Okay.
Yeah, if you go to Fangoria's website, there you've got the archive of the old issues for free. You can go like all the way back to issue 1, Fangoria. And if you look at the ads in the back, you'll see all these ads for either Dompo Studios masks or these little like licensed movies.
So interesting. So what were your favorite movie novelizations growing up?
Empire Strikes Back. Absolutely. I thought it was weird that there was a novelization of Jurassic Park. It was good, but Jurassic Park was based on a novel called Jurassic Park.
Is there a novelization on top of
it? And then they made a novelization of the movie of Jurassic Park based on the novel by Michael Crichton.
I knew there was a novelization of Jurassic Park 3 because I remembered that because they asked Michael Crichton to write it, and he said no.
Yeah, they did them all. And what else were the other really good ones that got me? They went through, James Blish went through and did every episode of Star Trek.
Oh, okay.
And again, no home video. And if you're a Trekkie, what are you going to do? You know, they were, mass market paperback size. There'd be like 2 episodes in each. And they did every episode of Star Trek. And I read those until the binding fell apart and I had to buy them again.
That's awesome. I didn't realize they did for the series. I know they did the films, which are still in print, or they reprint. They're still reprinting them. But that's wild. I never. We always talk about movie novelizations, but there's television.
Oh yeah, no, Mad from Uncle. Everything, all the Man from Uncles were novelized. I think some of the Green Hornets were. I want to say. But they started as radio plays, so it all tangles up.
So why horror? When because you did a lot of
horror.
But what attracted you to horror? Was it the taboo nature of it? Was it the thrill of it? Like
it's hard to say why you end up where you end up. Again, going back to my youth, how can I put this? There are somebody much wiser than me, and names flee me. Who directed Shawshank? Help me with a name. Frank.
Darabont.
Yes. He said of the Dr. Phibes movies to really reach. He said, when you are between 14 and 16, you will see a movie that will shape your future and you will go to your grave defending as art. And for him and for many, it was Dr. Phibes. That's what he remembered. For me, too, Dr. Phibes was, I saw it on the Channel 5 movie theater locally. Channel 5 out here, KTLA, used to run the same movie every night for the week. That's how they filled their grid. And if you missed it the one night, you could catch it the next night. So there's one for your early memories out here. And I saw Dr. Phibes, and it was the first time that I stayed up, that I didn't sleep. The film haunted me. It haunted me, and it changed me. I had always liked monster movies, but they were monster movies. It was a dude in a rubber suit, or it was a character study of a mad scientist or the sad story of his creation, but they were monster movies. This was horror. This person was an unstoppable force bringing a terrible demise on people, and no matter what, even knowing where he was going to hit next, they could not stop him because he was smarter than they were, and he was already dead. And I look back on it now and I see the style and the camp of it, but still, that scene where they drain Terry Thomas and the scene where they get the nurse with the locusts still makes my skin crawl. And I think that's why horror, because I still remember 14-year-old me then, and that's when my taste changed. It wasn't about we've got to go see War of the Gargantuas. It was we've got to go see Friday the 13th, and then we've got to see it 8 times on Dollar Tuesday to figure out how they got that arrow to come out of Kevin Bacon's neck. We didn't see it over and over again because it was high art. We saw it over and over again because back then you could amaze an audience, because there would always be a discussion after the movie with your friends of how did they do that? Because all practical effects are magic tricks. They're all magic tricks. Mm-hmm. They're all stage effects. Oh, yeah. And how did they do that? And we would come up with a theory, and they would say, no, couldn't be. It was his head. No, it couldn't be. His arms were moving. No, it couldn't be this. And we'd have to go see it again until finally they put out the behind the scenes movie. You know, Savini finally did his behind the scenes flick that I can't remember. I was like, oh, okay, that's how they did it. Yeah. Now, of course, how they did it is they pay thousands of people to paint every frame. It's cheating. That's why you can't amaze anymore. You can entertain, but you can't amaze.
Yeah, that is true.
But Kostansky can because he's still doing practical effects, which brings us back to Manborg.
Yeah, Manborg's one of those films. It was a thing in the early to mid 2010s of that 80s throwback, but do your own thing. Like, you ever see Turbo Kid?
It was a little frantic for me, but yes.
Yeah, or Kung Fury.
Kung Fury. I think everybody saw Kung Fury.
That was like the, I don't want to say watershed.
Well, it was the one that clicked.
Yeah,
it was the one that everybody saw. It's like, what's this all about? Or you should see Kung Fury. Oh, okay. Then you said, okay, I see what that's about now, and now I don't have to see another one.
Yeah, it was when it was fun to make 80s type movies. I feel like we're at the point where it's enough. Or
well, you can make, to me, I don't know if you're making, yeah, if you're trying to capture that era, mm-hmm. You know, now I graduated high school in 1982, so I know from 80s movies. Mm-hmm. Many of them were very much of their time. and
Yeah.
aren't coming back. I love RoboCop, but I don't know if you're ever going to catch what they caught, because when you saw RoboCop when it came out, it was unlike anything else.
Mhm.
And it was unapologetically whatever it was. It just showed up and it did what it did, and it did not close the door on its way out. It was just this rude thing that happened and left. I don't know. I think it. I don't think you can do it again. I think you have to do something else now. So it works in some places. I think Stranger Things is intriguing, and I think the '80s is when it takes place.
Yeah.
They
But
they when they made all the Raiders movies, they all take place in the '40s and the mid '40s and '50s, and they're shot. Although they're color and full bore special effects, they're still shot at a pace and written with dialogue that reflects those times,
Mhm.
and that worked out fine. I think it's the same thing. I think it's the same sort of thing. It's just when your homage is classic pulp, like with Star Wars or like with Raiders, you're going to get one kind of thing. When you're paying tribute or an homage to 1980s direct to video, the best you're going to do is a 1980s direct to video movie.
Yeah.
So even best case, you're still going to get Wizards of the Lost Kingdom too. The best you're going to get is Star Crash if you're aiming for a movie like Star Crash.
Well, let me ask you this then. Was the 80s just the best decade for pop culture? Because it just
No.
feels like everyone thinks that way at this point.
Well, they weren't there.
Yeah, like,
A bunch of stuff happened. I mean, suddenly visual effects uh, advanced enough in film that you could start shooting fantasy and science fiction movies seriously.
Mhm.
I mean, there's no way you could have attempted to make something like E.T., a heartfelt, tear-jerking movie with an animatronic lead. That there's no way you could have done that before because the technology just wasn't there. It's the same reason we've got all the superhero movies now.
Mhm.
People would have loved to have made Justice League and Wonder Woman and all those movies in the '80s, but watch Superman. That's the best you can make a guy fly. The Reeves Superman. That's as good as you could get it. And Tim Burton's Batman was terrific,
Mhm.
but there wasn't it wasn't Christopher Nolan's Batman because the effects stunt technology it just wasn't there at the time. So I think what happened in the '80s was there was a kind of a watershed between the people that were making the movies now were fans of these kind of stories,
Mhm.
and they knew how to really talk to 16-year-old me. They knew what that 16 to 20-year-old male lead ticket buyer was looking for. And that was we're going to make this shark movie, and we're going to make this space opera movie, and we're going to have this dude with a whip beat up Nazis, and everybody just went, yeah, you are totally going to do that. Yes, you are.
I also think part of that has to do with the whole new Hollywood movement of the late '60s and throughout the '70s had run its course.
Yeah, there's a book really worth reading called Pictures of a Revolution, if you can find it. And it covers, I think it was the 1969 Best Picture nominees. And it was when the old Hollywood and the new Hollywood kind of handed off. The nominees were anywhere from Dr. Dolittle, starring Rex Harrison, which was a big budget, splashy, old studio Technicolor marvel,
Mhm.
up against The Graduate,
Yeah.
completely independent film, small, small feature, new writers, new shooting, and then right in the center, Bonnie and Clyde. Ultra violent. Why is this even in theaters? You know, and that's just 3 of the 5. But these 5 movies were just, and they were all up for Best Picture. And if I remember right, The Graduate's the one I wanted. It's a great book, but it covers what you're talking about. It's the new Hollywood and the blockbuster. This whole thing of people lining up to see Star Wars, 150, 200 times, and these movies generating tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. It was business. It was business. But that's why I think that helped the novelizations, because it was another way, pre-home video. It was, how do we keep them interested in Star Wars until Empire is ready? Well, they can read the book. How do we keep them interested in Empire until Jedi's ready? Well, they can read the book.
It was, novelization was just so fascinating to me, because they sort of died in the 2000s, and we kind of have a bit of a resurgence going on since I think The Force Awakens really started opening that back up in the mainstream. I mean, Star Wars has always done it because George Lucas liked his books.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't read them necessarily after a certain point, but he approved all of them. But what are your, like, what do you consider the gold standard of a novelization? Like what are the key things that it has to do to set it above and beyond other novelizations?
But it has to be fun to read. It's got to be a fun book, regardless of anything else. I mean, if you have been drawn to the novelization, odds are you like the movie. That's probably, I don't know if many people get the book. Oh, I didn't see the movie, I guess I'll get the novelization. I don't think that happens now. I think it's, if I didn't see the movie, I'm going to wait for it to come on to Netflix. I'm going to wait for it to come on to Amazon. It's you don't have to go get the book instead. If anybody, and more people are reading now. I mean, books are up. Book sales are up across the board, across all SKUs. And hopefully it'll be that way with Manborg. By the way, it's coming out June 10th, this Friday, on mass market and trade paperback and ebook. Order now.
I'll be linked down in the description.
Excellent. So now that that's out of the way, I don't want Mark Miller screaming at me. It's like, you keep talking about every book except the one we're selling.
Oh, I know. I released my review of it yesterday.
Oh, so, was it good?
I mean, I think so. The thumbnail's terrible. I'm going to have to redo the thumbnail tomorrow.
Oh, but was the review good? Did you like?
I think it was fine. Yeah.
Okay.
I enjoyed the book.
that's the important thing.
I think I read 3/4 of it in one sitting.
I tried to make it go Zoom, because the movie goes Zoom. The book should go Zoom. This is not a thing that needs to get mired down. The whole thing's a chase scene from start to finish.
Oh, pretty much. It's the fastest paced novelization I've ever read. Might be one of the fastest paced novel, like just in general, books I've ever read.
Yeah, it's the movie is just over an hour. Mm-hmm. And they added fake trailers and Easter eggs to the end, so it would be long enough for a theatrical release. Astron 6 at that time was I can't remember if that was their first, if Manborg was their first, or if they did one other. But these guys, when they got an idea together, they made a trailer. Mm-hmm. That's what they did. If you go to the Astron 6 website, there's all these trailers for Laser Ghosts 2, Return to Laser Cove, and the one on the end of Manborg is called Biocop, and it's fantastic. Oh, it's so good. So good. A 9-minute trailer. But that's what they did. They had enough money and enough time to where, okay, we've got it fleshed out this far. How would we sell this idea to us? Let's make that trailer and be done, because that's going to be the best parts of the movie anyway. So there's like a dozen of these trailers on there. So yeah, they got used to cutting it down to to just the meat. They got used to just trim what is necessary to tell the tale. So when you're watching Manborg, the whole movie I think is 62 minutes start to finish. Now you can tell a big story. Dumbo's only that long.
Mhm.
There's a
Yeah.
huge story in there, so it's enough time to tell the story for sure. But if I couldn't very well do a 300 page, that's a lot of padding.
Thank you for not doing that.
Yeah, so the novel, getting back to the question of the novelizations that I really liked, I recently read, as a plug for another Encyclopocalypse title, I read Scared to Death, and I liked it a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. Um, I think, yeah, the hallmark is they have to be fun. They really have to be fun. And if you're not reading that thing, it should harken back to the movie. Yes, you should have a little bit of deja vu of your favorite parts of the movie,
Mhm.
but it's a book, and it's
Mhm.
got to be a good book. And if you're not a reader, if you don't like books, I don't know if you'll really like the novelization, no matter what the basis is.
Uh, there are certain I would say novelizations that I think are far superior than the films. Like we on paper movies, we just reviewed the Rambo 3 novelization.
Wow.
Rambo 3, the film, is a just a bland action film. Rambo 3, the novel, is fantastic.
Wow. I
It,
wonder if it was a good script. I wonder if it was a good script that got screwed up.
well, it's David Morrell who's the only one who's allowed to write Rambo, and it was his script he wrote for them. Well, it's part he wrote a script about instead of in Afghanistan, it was in Central America, and Troutman's family's kidnapped, and Rambo has to go rescue them.
Right.
But they didn't like that because Troutman's wife would be like Rambo's equal. And there was a scene where they were shooting machine guns together, and in '88 they were like, "We can't have that. Women can't be doing that." So they ignored the script, and Stallone wrote a script. Then Morrell wrote another script, and then they wrote like 18 scripts.
Oh
And
yeah.
Morrell just took elements from the first two. So like, there's this really cool, intense sandstorm scene. The Afghan characters are flushed out. There's a cool Dutch doctor that's completely cut from the film. The Russians aren't one dimensional characters.
I am going to look into that.
It's on Audible. It's a really good Audible book. Same with Rambo: First Blood Part 2, which adds a whole bunch of other things, also by David Morrell. He's the only one who's allowed to write Rambo in a novel form.
But it sounds like they made a fine choice.
Yeah, that's like, I consider that like just the absolute A tier. You take something that's super mediocre and you just make it excellent.
Well, I've never seen a crew anywhere at the end of a show when you're talking to them about the movie or the show, and usually there's two or three people saying, well, you should have seen the show we were going to make. When this thing started out, oh my God, you should have seen the show we were going to make. It was so cool. This is okay. What we made's all right. But it's just this series of compromises that have to happen along the way. And yes, when you're doing the novelization, you can flip all that back in. I found with Manborg, there is a subplot in the movie that's really funny, with the Baron, second in command of Hell's forces, being completely enamored with prisoner number 7. With
Yes.
And I guess you'd have to ask Steve Kostansky for the particulars, but that it wasn't in the script. They came up with it. Jeremy, is it Jeremy Gillespie, the co-writer, played the Baron, and it was a little flat, and he just started monologuing, when his back was turned or whatever, about how much his heart was breaking for this girl, and it just grew as a little quirk for him because it was more interesting than him just twirling his mustache and being the uber bad guy. But it wasn't in the script.
It's funny.
It wasn't in there at all. And the opposite, at the end of the movie in the script, the Count Dracula, Hell's ruler on Earth, goes through this whole series of crazy transformations, turning into vaster, meaner, terrible, terrible monsters. And I think, again, you'd have to ask Steve. I would think if they shot it the way it looks good on paper, it's like, and then this cool thing happens, and then this happens, and this. If you were watching it, you'd be like, oh, come on, really? It's how many times we got to kill this guy? It was one of those situations.
Oh.
every time you kill it, it comes back stronger, bigger. You've only made it. You've fallen into my trap. So instead, they just, I'm not going to spoil the end of the movie, but they did it properly. I thought they did it well.
Yeah, I really just thoroughly enjoyed your novelization. I can't stress that enough.
Thanks.
I have to, after my unfortunate, it's the end of the day, but I have to read Jaws: The Revenge now.
Awesome.
And it's 312 pages, and I'm terrified of why a story like that has to be that long. And I'm hoping something wild happens in it.
There's a lot of travel.
There is.
It may just be by the time they set up a subplot in each of the locations, it's enough. There's a lot of travel.
But I haven't seen Jaws: The Revenge in years.
Well, why would you? Unless you
well,
lost a bet.
when I was like in middle school, it was on AMC all the time. So it was just on, and like my mom would be watching it and complaining about it. Just like, there's nothing else on. I guess I watch Jaws: The Revenge. Or I always hope for Jaws 3, because that has the shark that doesn't move. It just kind of glides everywhere because the 3D effect.
Now, I saw Jaws 3D I saw it in the theater with the glasses, because there was a minor 3D redo in the mid 80s. When sharks are underwater and they're coming at you, with all the other crap that's in the water floating around, it's not really coming off the screen. They did a lot better on the boats, because they'd have like just a pole that they were adjusting the sail with or something, and they'd bring the pole across camera, and everybody else would duck, or they'd throw something at another crew member. So the humans on the boat were a lot scarier than the shark.
Yeah, I think it also, with those optical effects in blue water, it didn't
pay off. It just looked like it was swimming around.
Yeah, it's not like Friday the 13th Part 3, which I think does it better.
I remember. What do I remember? I remember some pole weapon. I remember the eyeball.
The eyeball. Do you remember which eyeball? There's two eyeballs.
I remember the one was a squeeze and a pop.
Yes,
at the camera. That one I remember. And I remember the really goofy guy offered a spliff to the audience. That was the point where I'm like, okay, this movie's officially dumb now, because the guy looks right at the camera, totally breaks the fourth wall, and he's like, here. And they hold on it for the longest time, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah,
I'm remembering wrong, but if I'm remembering right, that was it.
I like the harpoon gun.
That was cool. That was the pole weapon I'm remembering, because even when they ran it around, it looked cool, because it was a long lens or short lens, and it was waving around really good.
Yeah. Although when it comes back into frame, it's a funky cut. But when it comes out, that first half, it's even in 2D, it gets me.
You will see no such goofy ass 3D effects in Manborg. No siree. You will see only good, wholesome, practical effects as they should be.
Yeah.
Have you seen Psycho Goreman?
Yes.
And what did you think of Goreman?
I thought it was really fun. I saw it because Rich Evans from Red Letter Media is a side character in it. And he does his screaming, which I always enjoy. There's something about Rich Evans' voice just makes me laugh, especially when it's not coming out of Rich Evans.
It's coming out of some indescribable lumpy creature of some kind.
Yeah. I
Now,
thought it was really
was
fun.
he one of the group of raiders that attacked in the park, or was he one of the Galactic Council around the table?
He's one of the raiders in the park.
Okay.
I thought it was wonderfully violent.
So it's exactly what it's supposed to be.
And those kids, they just made me
Yeah.
laugh.
They could have been so freaking annoying. My wife, the whole time we're watching it, she's like, where did they find these kids? Because they're funny. I can watch these kids. As soon as the brother loses crazy ball and he's got to dig his own grave, we were in. We were so in from that moment. And my wife's just like, this is like Calvin and Hobbes, but Hobbes is real and he's a demon. Like, yeah, this is awesome.
And the story is just horribly graphic and violent.
Yeah, it was lovely, just lovely.
Comedic gore at its finest.
Not since Dead Alive has there been more fun.
Oh, we need a Dead Alive novelization.
I would run out of onomatopoeia. I would run out of splatty, squishy words along the way.
Oh yeah, you'd have to have 5 thesauruses.
Yes, and then I'd have to. There's things where you can record and it will tell you the spelling. Voice to text, and I'd have to like make, and then see how it spelled it. I don't know if that came across the mic or not.
Or a bad taste. That's another one.
Yes,
Peter Jackson.
Well, that's got more of a plot, really.
Oh yeah,
the invasion force and all kinds of stuff going on there.
But it's also nonsense.
Well, yeah, as the best stuff is.
Nonsense.
So yeah, with again with Manborg, as I was watching, I was shocked that they made it for as little as they made it, and the key to it, I think, they knew what they were doing. That's the main thing. There's skill there, and it's that old triad of good, fast, and cheap. You've heard this one. It goes back forever. Any creative endeavor, you get to pick 2 of those: good, fast, cheap. Pick 2. And when I say cheap, I just mean inexpensive. They wanted good, and they didn't have any money, so it wasn't fast. They spent 2 years. And if the frame looked a little bit empty, they'd go to the green screen and stage a little thing and composite that in, and that was fine. And as you're watching it, I mean, watch for, because you haven't finished it yet. If you've seen a lot of crap movies, the hallmark of the crap movie is the long 2-shot during the dialogue scene, where they've just got 2 singles and the wide. We used to call it 2-shot and fries, where when I was, and it just goes on and on and on while they're waiting for the budget to catch up. They just hold on that until the budget's caught up again, and then they get back to the movie. You won't see that in Manborg.
Or worse, it's the 2-shot and it's in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah.
You won't have to pay permit for.
But you won't see that in Manborg. You'll see when they're talking, he's got the wide, he's got the medium wide, he's got him in 2s, he's got him in 3s, he's got several different close-ups, he got all of his coverage because it's a movie. I guess that's every time I watch Manborg, I'm like, it is a movie that they made out of found objects and passion. And it comes through. You can tell watching it that everybody watching it had a ball and took it seriously. They're both at the same time.
It's a labor of love.
Yes.
And I'm just glad that Manborg has got a novelization.
Me too. What I had done.
I read it and I reviewed it, and I'm still amazed. We have a Manborg novelization.
Steve Kostansky, the creator, is equally amazed that there's a Manborg novelization. If you read his foreword, he has lovely things to say, but I can't remember which book. But when Mark first called him and said, "Would you be interested in this?" he was looking around his office at all of the completely pointless merchandise from all these movies. He's got like Phantom Menace soap. He's got all this stuff all around, and I'm the same way. Does anyone actually need an anniversary Gur pin from? I mean, we're all the same way. We've all. Does anybody need a Dark Shadows Viewmaster reel? And I can't remember which two novelizations were right in front of his nose on his bookshelf when he was asked the question, "Are you good for this?" But he looked at them and said, "Absolutely, I am good for this." And he was very helpful. He was nothing but helpful.
That's really good. All right. So typically when I interview someone, I ask them what they're reading right now. So what are you reading?
I am, this is going to sound strange. It's actually for something else. I am rereading everything Solomon Kane.
I did that last year.
Yeah, I have not only the collected works Howard stuff, but I just found Dark Horse did a series of comics.
Yes.
A while back, and some of them just based on the fragments. Like Castle of the Devil was based on a very thin chapter, and they're all wonderful. But that's right now. I'm in the middle of rereading all of that, all of Solomon Kane, and then on the nonfiction side, I'm what am I reading on the non? Oh, it's right here. Hang on, I can't remember the title, so I have to look. This one right here, folks. Fast, Cheap, and Written That Way. Yes, sirree, by John Gaspard. He has gone back. He did another one on the production of movies, and this is one about the writing of movies. But he goes back through the Corman years and all of the early years, and said, "Well, this was actually a really good movie. Dementia 13 actually turned out pretty good. What was the process that made that pretty good?" And he interviews everybody. He got Coppola. He got everybody back on board. And here it's about writing the scripts. So it's nonfiction, but it's going back and through titles that turned out to be really good, even though the movies were not terribly expensive to make. Interviewed when he was still alive, interviewed George Romero about writing Martin, interviewed Bob Clark about writing Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, Stuart Gordon on Reanimator. Let's see, Henry Yaglom on Venice. Dylan Kidd on Roger Dodger, but it goes on and on and on. But they're great stories, and it really gets your brain moving if you're gonna get behind the typewriter. So those two things, Solomon Kane and Fast, Cheap, and Written That Way.
Can I direct you to two other Solomon Kane things?
Okay.
There's a Marvel omnibus of all the complete Marvel
Got
work.
it.
Do you have the novelization to the film of Solomon Kane?
I do not have the novelization to the film of Solomon Kane. I need to get that.
I think it's still in print. I think you can find it on Amazon.
I will. I will make it my duty. I will make it my purpose to find the novelization of Solomon Kane.
Have you seen the film?
I have.
I thought it was pretty fun.
They did okay.
Yeah.
They did okay. It again, I will to quote when David Cronenberg was up for an Oscar, he said it's a little silly because he felt it is so hard to make a movie. It is so hard to actually get a movie finished that anybody who does should get an award because you just don't know what it takes. So I liked it. I just thought it got a little, it was too fighty at the end. For me, because Kane usually it's, I understand they got to sell some tickets, you got to do some box office and two guys sword fighting. That's good for the start, but it's not good for the end.
Yeah. I really enjoy that Solomon Kane.
Now, listen to me, and I have two. At the end of my story, I've got two guys sword fighting. So what am I talking about? What am I saying?
Well, anyway, I think that about does it.
Okay.
Any closing thoughts?
Other than everybody should get a copy of Manborg in trade paperback, mass market paperback, or ebook on the 10th.
Or all of the above.
Or all of the above. We're casting for the audiobook now. So it will be coming audio shortly.
So excited.
So that'll be fun. It's down to a couple of voices, and I think whoever among them reads it, it will be very good. I think it's going to read well. I think it's going to read very. I try to, as I'm writing, I'm always listening to the story. Mm-hmm. So I hope it will read well.
Okay.
What are you reading right now?
I finished the 2 short stories of yours you sent me.
Oh, okay.
Before this, and I'm jumping into Jaws the Revenge.
Oh, yeah, you said you had to, but that's work. That's not fun.
That is work. That's for paper movies. That's what I do for you all for paper movies. Adam's bad choice of wanting to read Jaws the Revenge. But other than that, the rest of this season of paper movies is going to be fun reading. That's just the longest. I wouldn't be so.
It may be fun. You could get in there and find, like with Rambo 3, you could get in there and say, "Wow, they turned this into a really cool thing."
I'll probably email you if there's some real nonsense in there to share it with you.
Because I look forward to that.
All right. Anyway, go check out Manborg. Pre-order Manborg, the novelization by Bret Nelson. I'll have a link down below in the description. Anyway, thank you for joining me, Bret.
Thanks for your time. And everybody run out and get a Viewmaster too. Maybe we'll put Manborg out on Viewmaster as well.
Let's get that Kickstarter going.
Yeah. It's available on VHS. If you go to Raven Banner, you can get Manborg on VHS. That was their 10th anniversary thing.
All right. Have a good one, everyone.